Steve Polisi, ESPN FC, new show for this season, for this European season in football, has been very successful right out of the gate. Talk a little bit about putting together the show and the concept behind the show.
Yeah, the idea is to try and find a mix that is most palatable to as many fans as possible. If we were on an all-soccer network, the task would be a lot easier, right? You just kind of gear it only for hardcore fans and go from there. But since we're on at 5:30, our regular time slot is 5:30 on ESPN2. You have to make it so that you're not going in too deep on any one thing, because we're trying to appeal to as many different kinds of fans as possible. I mean, obviously, you guys all know that it's a fractured kind of soccer audience in this country. So, you know, we want to be appealing to U.S. national team fans, English Premier League fans, fans of the Champions League, fans of other leagues in Europe, fans of MLS, fans of the Mexican League. So that's obviously taking quite a bit on, and you have to scale everything down from there and try and find kind of a sweet spot where it appeals to the most amount of people, and that no one kind of feels left out of this show, because we really want this show to be the kind of the show for American soccer fans, and no matter what type of fan they are.
You've been able to acquire some really high-level talent. Someone like Craig Burley, for instance. He's co-commentator for Premier League games, very popular in the UK and abroad. You're able to bring him here full-time to do the studio show, to do ESPN FC. Just using him as an example and some of the other talent, talk about that process to get top-level talent from Europe.
Sure. I mean, I've been working with Craig for a long time now. When he was at ESPN UK, and he was one of the main analysts there. So I actually spoke to him a few years ago, and I said, hey, if the rights go someplace else in a few years, would you ever consider moving to the U.S.? So I was constantly planting the seed there. He used to appear on our Press Pass show regularly from the UK, and I love what he brings. I think he's a unique talent. He causes a reaction one way or another to people, and I think that's not very common with a lot of your Premier League talent. In general around the world, guys don't really necessarily like to go out on a limb too strong, and he's the exact opposite of that. I mean, he's going all in on everything he says, and it's a great guy to kind of build around, because whatever he says, the other guys are going to want to react and jump in. So it kind of, you can wind him up, and it just kind of goes from there.
How do you feel the show is growing and evolving through time? You've been on the air now about 4 months.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I mean, we've got our full set now, which includes a couch area. So basically what we can do is we can do our highlights from a desk. We can go over to the couch for more in-depth conversation, and I think what you see is that it will continue to evolve. Also, kind of the mix of talent that we have is changing over time because of people's schedules, and the MLS season, some of the guys are gone for a lot of the time. So I think as guys get more reps together, they'll develop more of a chemistry, and it'll feel a little bit a little more consistent. But the thing I really like about the show is that we have people all over the world. We have a ton of talent. I think last count there's something like 28 talent involved in the show. So the idea is to have the right people talking about the right stories, and I think that's something that we're pretty consistent with.
Last question, any coincidence you're here in New England and you've got Taylor Twellman, Stevie Nicol, and Paul Mariner all together and reunited on your set?
It's not much of a, I mean, it kind of evolved out of, those guys. We established relationships with a lot of those guys a long time ago, because while Stevie and Paul were still coaching, I used to have them come down and do some stuff on the show, because they were semi-local. And then as their coaching careers came to an end, we liked what they brought to the table, and we've continued that relationship. Taylor's a little different, having been out of the game. ESPN brought him in, right after he had to retire. So, but yeah, I mean, it is pretty funny, and to see their relationship off camera is actually very funny, because it's almost like a father-son thing, and there's a lot of back and forth between those guys, which is pretty cool. Fantastic.
If you're a sports fan, walking around the ESPN campus is somewhat like walking around Hollywood is for the rest of society. At any given moment, you could run into a Super Bowl champion, a Champions League winner, a World Series MVP, or an NBA Finals winner.
Hello, Bob.
Good evening.
How are you?
Special effects guys are doing a nice job.
The other side, this system, it's called a Barrel Vision, but we call it ESPN Access. This started out with soccer only, and then it progressed to football, and then
I've got football, I've got basketball, I've got hockey, I've got tennis. They've got some other things like cricket and things that we don't use, but they have them.
Yeah.
Same concept, right? It's a third-party telestrator. Works off field calibration, so we get metrics, speed, distance, and all that stuff. Difference between Aura and Axis, besides a couple little features, would be we can do multiple angles. So I can do the flights and everything else, and I can do a couple more 3D tools, but you still have the tracking and everything else. There are some, like I have the flights between two angles.
And one of the things that he's talking about flights, let's say for soccer, you've got your camera on the 50-yard line. The offside happens here, and there's no camera right here, but there's a camera down below it. He can slide you right down to the line on the offside with this system without having cameras, all just in the...
Yeah, and I can actually create my own views and stuff like that, so if there's not a all 22, I'm using football terms, but I can do a bird's eye view and stuff just by using the field that I have. I can make basically a virtual field by overlapping frames and creating that in a 3D image, and I can make my own views and stuff like that. You know, we have a couple other tools like sliding players, making players disappear. The virtual run's big now, where everything stays the same. I don't have one built out now, but everything stays frozen, and I can run him in his space using those actual frames. You know, we can move his path and things like that. So it is powerful. It still has the same metrics and everything else, spaces on the field, arrows, all the basic stuff, but it's a little more powerful with the multiple camera angles.
And Craig still with me as we are going to talk about the US and England. The question is simple, boys. Let's go to the Scotsman first, shall we? Who's going to go further? England or the US?
Depends on the group.
Oh,
Same, doesn't it? England are a better side. What about the Scots? Potentially they should go for it. I think so.
You say they're favourites? Better, and then technically they're technically better than the US? Technically they're inferior.
So the US have got better players than England?
Okay.
Oh, come on. Marker? No, I agree with you, mate, for the first time in a long time, but you know.
I think, as Craig said, you have to wait